Now, how would you detect your own inauthenticity or your own incongruence? Well, Rogers had this idea that he called subception, which was maybe something that you might regard as a sixth sense. It's sort of like propriocentric perception, and that's the perception that you have of your body as it's reacting and localized in time and space. And so it's sort of like touch, the feeling, but it's your sense of how you're reacting internally and where you are. And a lot of that is subserved by the autonomic nervous system, which is reporting to you about various states of being in your body. Rogers believed that you could use the information that's being provided to you from your body, sort of bottom up, to determine when you were being inauthentic or non-congruent. And I've thought about this for a long time and tried to sort it out in a practical manner, and what I've concluded is this. You could try this for a couple of weeks. It's an extremely interesting exercise. So you sort of have to detach yourself from your thoughts and what you say. So you got to assume, you start by assuming that what you say and what you think is not necessarily you. And of course that's just the case, because a lot of what you think, in fact most of what you think and most of what you say, are the opinions of other people. They're things you've read or things people have told you, and you know that's a benefit in some ways because you get all those thoughts that other people have spent a long time formulating, but it's a disadvantage in that it's not exactly you. Okay, so you detach yourself from that. You're no longer your thoughts or the things that you say, or maybe you're no longer all of them. And now what you're going to try to find out is which of your thoughts and things that you say are you, and maybe so you can not utilize the rest, or maybe so that you can correct the rest, because they're not representative of yourself as an integrated being. They don't take everything into account. My sense has been that you can tell when you're saying something that's not authentic by feeling out whether or not it makes you weak or strong. Now, you know, sometimes when you're conversing with people, you can say something that embarrasses yourself. Now, Nietzsche said, for example, everyone has perjured themselves at least once in the attempt to maintain their good name. Something like that. It's not an exact quote, but I've got the gist of it right. So maybe you're saying things to impress someone, or you're saying things to remain part of your political group or your social group or whatever, or maybe you have attributes, personal attributes that might be positive that you're ashamed of, and so you're not going to speak about them. So there's a falseness about your self-representation. Watch for 2 weeks and see. Make a rule that if you start to say something and it makes you feel weak, it's hard to describe exactly what that means. To me, what it means is that I can feel things coming apart sort of in my midsection, so I think it's an autonomic phenomena. And the subjective sense is of falsehood. It's like I've just stepped off the solid ground and onto something that doesn't support me well, and it feels like a self-betrayal. So that's existential inauthenticity. You can feel it right away. And then the rule is, shut up. If that happens, stop talking. And then feel around and see if you can find some words that you can say in that situation that don't produce that sensation. And it's like, you see this played out in different forms of drama. So there's a scene in The Lord of the Rings, for example, where I believe it's Gollum and Bilbo. It's The Lord of the Rings. It's Bilbo. It's The Lord of the Rings, not The Hobbit, because The Hobbit's Frodo, right? So it's Bilbo. Have I got it wrong? It's the other way around? Okay, so Gollum and Frodo, yes, are going across this swamp, and the swamp is essentially full of dead souls, and they have to step very carefully in order to not fall off the track, and the stones are sort of hidden underneath the surface. And the implication there is that in order to follow a trail properly, you have to pick your ground very carefully, and you have to test it to see if it's solid, or you'll slip off into this, well, essentially what it is chaos. You'll slip off into chaos. And that's a dramatic representation of what I'm suggesting to you. It's like all you have to do is notice, and you have to pay attention. And so to some degree what you're doing, in fact, is you're making your capacity to pay attention superordinate to your capacity to think and to speak. Because you know, you might ask yourself, well, exactly what are you? Well, I said you can identify yourself with your intellect, and that's very, very common. It's sort of like the worst sin of intelligent people. But that isn't all you are. And there are lots of reasons for making the assumption that attention is a higher order function than intellect. Because attention is what teaches intellect. So if you pay very, very careful attention to what you say without having the automatic, without bringing the automatic assumption that what you say is you to bear on the conversation, and then also to feel like you have to defend it once you say it, you'll find very rapidly that very much of what you think and say has absolutely nothing to do with you. It's just, it's the dead souls that are in that little scene that I described to you, sort of manifesting themselves in your head. They're dead ideas that other people have created. And some of them might be applicable to you, you know. You might have the right to them, so to speak. But lots of them won't. And you're using the words as camouflage or self-defense or as an attempt to attain status in a status hierarchy or to make yourself look smarter than you are, or there's all sorts of reasons. Or to hide what you think from other people. I see this in undergraduate essays all the time. So, because the essays are full of cliches. And you know, it's not all that obvious why a cliche is a bad thing, but a cliche is a bad thing in the same way that being possessed by the dead is a bad thing. It's like a cliche isn't you. It's something else. It's like the crowd. It's like the other. It's not living. It has nothing to do with you. And part of the reason that students use cliches is because it's easier than using your own genuine creative formulation. So you can just default to cliche use, but there's something more insidious than that, is that if you write an essay that's nothing but a string of cliches, and you get criticized, then you're not being criticized. What's being criticized is the cliches, and you can hide behind that, and the part of you that's wise but treacherous thinks, well, the criticism doesn't really apply to me because, you know, I didn't really say what I thought. And then there's this kind of sense you get that you've gotten away with something, which is a terrible thing. So when I read undergraduate essays, what I see very frequently is, especially the first essays, just nothing but cliches. It's awful, it's dull, you can hardly stand reading it because there's nothing in it that's gripping or alive. And then maybe the second essay you can see there's a layer of cliche, and then now and then the person will be brave enough to poke up a thought of their own. It'll just sort of poke up somewhere maybe in 3 pages in. It's like this little green shoot that's barely alive, and the person is brave enough to pop it up in the hope that, you know, maybe it won't get walloped down with a sledgehammer. And so one of the things I try to do is to point that out. It's like, look, you know, this is something, there's a real thought here. It's a real original thought. It's something that you have the right to because it's derived from your own experience and your own knowledge, and you've formulated it in an original and compelling way. But the problem with that is that if you get criticized for that, you're just going to pull right back into your shell, right? Because that hurts, because it's actually part of you that you've exposed. And that's a terrifying thing, to expose yourself like that. But it's an absolute prerequisite to genuine communication and thought.